What is up, wrestling fans, and all rise for an all-new edition of the Parts Unknown podcast. It's been too long. I'm, of course, the tribal chief of Ringside Intel, Jason Burgos, and with me, as always, is my wrestling wise man and the leader of the Lakeland Dangerous Alliance, and that is the one and only Jose Maldonado, Baby Blue. It's been too long. How are you doing tonight?
You are 100% right, man. It has been far too long. The fans have been clamoring for it. We've been clamoring for it. And here we are to deliver the goods, y'all. I'm doing fantastic. Honored to be on with you as always, man. We got a lot to get into, and I cannot wait to dive on. And it is WrestleMania season in full swing, baby. Gotta love it.
And as always, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, please like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We got a lot, like Jose mentioned, a lot of topics. First, we'll talk about Elimination Chamber predictions. We're going to go and get into that. Just the Chamber matches. We're also going to take a look at some news that's made the round, speculate, give some opinions on it. One being Aleister Black, what's the plans with him, or excuse me, Malakai Black, but he might be turning back to Aleister Black at this point. If he is coming back to WWE after his release from AEW, we're going to talk about the recent reports of why a Shane McMahon and AEW negotiation and partnership didn't happen and fell apart recently. We're going to talk about some news with Goldberg, his path to his match. He kind of gave some information on when that should be. We're going to speculate on maybe who could he be facing when he does his WWE retirement match later this year. Also got to talk about Ricky Starks, which is a big story. Ricky Saints. Talk about his move to NXT, plans for him coming up, and also just look at the idea of the recent WWE roster cuts and how supposedly reports are they're linked to NXT call-ups. Who could those people being called up be? First, let's get into it. Elimination Chamber's coming up. It's the final major stop that will set pretty much all the paths for WrestleMania 41 this year. We're just going to do the Chamber matches. Yeah, there's a couple of other matches on the card, but the Chamber matches is the most important because it's going to set up some big storylines that come. First, let's get into the Women's Elimination Chamber match. The women's match includes Liv Morgan, fantastic. Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, fantastic. Naomi, Bayley, Roxanne Perez, double fantastic. I mean, this has three of my favorites going into the match. I'm thrilled about it. But before we get into the winner, who do you think should be looked at as maybe a dark horse? Who's the person that maybe people are overlooking that maybe WWE surprises and they have her face Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania?
Honestly, we're talking a dark horse. Let's go the darkest. Let's go Roxanne Perez. She just got called up. And well, let me not get ahead of myself. Hasn't officially been called up.
Coming,
however, we all know it's coming. You know what I mean? We'll get into that. But big showing in the Royal Rumble. Broke the women's record for longevity in terms of a Rumble match. Won her qualifying match against Raquel Rodriguez. Gotta love a big versus little matchup. David versus Goliath type of deal. And Roxanne is the goods. Anybody who's been watching her in NXT, man, she delivers as a face. When she kind of got forced into the heel role, a lot of questions about whether she can handle that. She has passed with flying colors. She has been a sensational character. She really is the total package. And what better way to introduce her to the big time than just putting her in the deep end and putting her up against Rhea? You know what I mean? A very beloved baby face. Roxanne's character is like perfect to play off of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if and that's what I'm loving about this women's Chambers match. We could talk about the men's match in a little bit as well. I think there's a couple of interesting directions that they can go, which aren't out of the question. You know what I mean? Like there may be some scenarios that are probably a little more obvious. But if Roxanne wins it, I don't think anybody would be upset about that. I think the fans would get on board for it. And in terms of in-ring, we know that she can deliver. So it would be a fantastic matchup. Wouldn't be upset if that dark horse dream came true.
And I don't have a different pick. That would be my pick too. And what's funny too is that I said to the wife like a month ago, man, when Roxanne gets called up, I want to see her face Rhea Ripley. We got a taste of it. And the wife not happy with that. She's such a hater. But we got a taste of that this past week where Raquel Pennington, in terms of the small versus big, how Roxanne will perform against much bigger athletes. And that match was great. I mean, Raquel doesn't get enough credit how good she is. But that match was good. So I can only imagine a Rhea match would be great. So, I mean, then, since we kind of agree on the dark horse, then I'll go into who I pick. And this one, I think you nailed it. It's wide open. It's not as obvious as the men's or how often Elimination Chamber matches can be. I think the ones we could eliminate are Alexa, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think she's going to go, get the opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised. We've been getting clear hints that something with the Y6 is going to happen. And maybe that is really pushed further at Elimination Chamber. Bailey, she's not going to win. That's not an option. It really is. It's either, and Liv is not going to go and face Rhea Ripley again. That's not again. Happen. So it's really down to Bianca, Naomi, oh my God, and then Roxanne Perez. I just feel when you really break it down and look at it, it's Bianca, and I think that's a great choice. One, because Bianca's, we've seen enough of her as a tag team performer. She needs to go back to singles. She spent a whole year away from the major titles, major singles titles, letting everybody get their chance. But we can't deny she's a top star. That clearly that Jade Cargill mystery attacker storyline is going to turn up soon to separate them, for them to not have the tag titles anymore. And also just Bianca and Rhea is something we haven't seen yet. As much as we've seen a lot of things and they have to fill TV time, that's a great matchup that we have yet to see each other. So just like the best female athletes on the roster in an era where the female roster is stacked. So I think it has to be Bianca. Is there any reason to believe it wouldn't be her, or are you on board? She's just kind of the obvious choice when you look at it.
Yeah, no, I'm on board. Yeah, I talk about other scenarios, but if we're talking about the best scenario, the most obvious scenario, even my process of elimination, the way you broke it down, it really is Bianca. Because if it was going to be Naomi, it'd basically be the same story as it would be with Bianca, and Bianca's the better option in that case. Roxanne's more the dark horse, and like you said, Bailey and Liv aren't exactly the freshest opponents in this scenario, and Alexa has her own thing that she's going to lead into, what it seems like. So yeah, Bianca's the best choice. Both in terms of story and in terms of in-ring quality. To your point, Bianca and Rhea have kind of come up at the same time and been the marquee stars of this generation of the women's division. So to put them against each other is a WrestleMania matchup. This is the time of year where you want those dream kind of matchups that are going to hit. Fans are still behind the both of them. Bianca, like you said, has been kind of in the tag division for the better part of the last year. And fans still get it when she comes out that she is a star. Has not diminished her in the least. So to put her back in this position and potentially have the payoff of the Jade Cargill situation, to see whatever direction that goes, to see who's responsible. Is it one of them? Is it something with Jade? That playing into the intrigue just adds more to it. Bianca's the best choice leading into it, and I think we're going to end up seeing that happen.
And it's cool too, because when you look at the options, it's like, obviously this is all fictional, but it's all about believability. And it's like, who really could beat Rhea? That's one of the people you can point to say, yeah, if she beat her, that makes sense. Like, she's just as athletic, probably more athletic, skilled, like she can do it. And then, then just if she doesn't win, at least it wasn't like she won the Royal Rumble and then you get this unfortunate payoff of a Royal Rumble winner that doesn't win at WrestleMania. Although I hope the women's Royal Rumble winner doesn't win at WrestleMania this year. But, at least they have directions. At least it'll be, we're unsure. Rhea's probably would win that, but there's a chance it can go a lot of directions. Maybe we get like a Bianca Belair heel turn or something like that. That'd be great. But, yeah, I think it's the best way to go now. But moving on from there, the men's elimination chamber. We've got CM Punk. Yes. We've got John Cena. All right. We got Drew McIntyre. I don't dislike Drew anymore. I'm a supporter of Drew. He's done fantastic.
He's converted you. You gotta love it.
Yes. Logan Paul. I mean, come on. I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but it's unfortunate. David Priest, good for Damien, and then Seth Rollins. Very much over Seth. I wish it was Finn Balor instead. But let's do the same thing. Who's the dark horse? Who's the person, with clear favorites? Punk, Cena, maybe even Seth. Who's the dark horse that maybe they surprise and they if for the people that maybe thinking Cena, maybe it's this
person. I think it's Logan. I really think it's Logan Paul. I think it's too soon. I don't think it's going to happen. But if they really want to cause some waves, if they really want to, bring some outside attention, which WWE loves to bring, and they've been, to their credit, really, capitalizing on that under the TKO brand. Logan is the move. Logan is a big name from the outside that will draw a lot of eyes. The dude has proven himself in the ring, although the Mysterio match kind of exposed him a little bit, recently, but. I mean, Logan is a big name, whether we like it or not. And in the ring, he has shown that he can at least go, and they will not put him in a position to embarrass himself or the company in this scenario. If he does end up getting the win somehow, you can see a lot of preparation going into this match to make sure that it maximizes his minutes, make sure that his athleticism is on display, rehearsal time, whatever the case may be. But if we're really going with a dark horse that can cause some waves and really throw everything into a loop, I think Logan's the move, as unpopular as it may be for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's crazy. I just feel like it's so obvious who is probably going to win. I would probably have CM Punk as the dark horse, maybe Damian Priest, because we really haven't seen Damian Priest and Cody Rhodes, and that's something fresh. And they've really tried to maximize Damian Priest, and they really clearly seem to feel he's one of the key parts of the company, at least for the next few years. So that would be my pick. So we kind of know who I think is going to win, but who do you agree? Is it pretty much so obvious it's going to be Cena, or do you think maybe it's not so obvious it's going to be Cena?
I don't think it's as obvious as people are making it out to be. I do ultimately think it will be Cena, for the reasons that with WrestleMania in particular, with the very few exceptions, the WrestleMania main events, they love their marquee matchups, name versus name, one-on-one, just, two faces on a poster, and that sells the brand. And if you're doing that, Cena and Cody, absolutely, especially with Cena having very few spots left. This is the final year. Cody has made it, absolutely clear that he would love to face Cena at least one more time. What better way to do it than have it be at the WrestleMania main event? I think there's scenarios where Punk could win it and kind of throw that in there and get his WrestleMania main event that way. Rollins, I see there's a path for it as well, which also relates to Punk, because I think if Rollins wins, there's a scenario where Punk gets himself in that match as well, and we go triple threat. And there's a couple of scenarios that can go that way. But if we're talking about the odds, Cena's the biggest candidate to win this. It's the obvious choice. It sells the most. It really does. And with his impassioned promo after the Rumble, which I absolutely loved. Yeah. It's a side of Cena that we haven't seen in a long time. The intensity, play that up heading into Mania. We'll see at the time of this recording. Who knows? Even we got Mr. Johnson showing up on SmackDown, so who knows what they can throw to the WrestleMania plans. But as it goes right now, as it stands right now, Cena's the pick, and it wouldn't be a bad pick at all.
Yeah, I agree. I do hope. I'm a fan of for people that may have missed it. There's been rumblings that they might do a Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins versus CM Punk match. While that makes sense if it was for a title, as a non-title match, that seems odd. But there's been other reports since then that there's some within the company that would rather see Punk in the main event with Cody and with Cena. And if that somehow pans out in this match, I will love that too. And I think that checks a lot of boxes. You get Cena in the main event of his last WrestleMania. You get Punk in the main event that he's never been able to. You got the Punk and Cody history. You got the Cena and Punk history. It's great drama. So I'm hoping that's where to go. But yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. I think it's gonna be John Cena for sure. Let's get into some news. A lot of news. It's been a very busy last couple weeks in the wrestling industry. One of the biggest storylines was that last week, early last week, or maybe or late last week or the week before, we got the news that Malakai Black's contract with AEW had finally expired. There's some rumblings about that. It finally expired. That's what reports said. Then soon after that was reports that Miro, who had wanted his release for a long time, he got it. We all know Ricky Starks got his release, and then he showed up on NXT that week as Ricky Saints, which we found out this week. So it seems like Malakai Black, Miro are probably headed back to WWE. That's what the recent word is. Malakai seems like a lock. Miro, we've talked about this off the show, I think would be a great addition to TNA. I'd rather see Miro facing Joe Hendry and the possible storylines, or Moose and those storylines. But if Malakai Black comes back, how do you think they go about it? Because for as cool as he was and the cool things he did in WWE and NXT, that's one of the few things you have to give credit to him and Tony Khan and AEW, that the House of Black and all that stuff was one of the best things that they've done over the last couple of years. And the look, the direction of it, how they formed. Do you think because they see that and understand, hey, this was cool. This is a good idea. Let's not be petty and be like, oh, we got better stuff. Do you think they followed that? Do you think Malakai Black stays heel because he showed that side of him in AEW, which we didn't see in NXT and WWE? That was very good. What do you think they go with Malakai, and who would you like to see him face when he is back in WWE, which is probably very likely?
I think he stays heel. If he wants to maximize his potential in WWE, he goes heel, because you look at the faces of WWE right now, it's loaded. You got Cena hanging around, although it's not for long. Rollins is kind of in between. Punk's a huge name. Jey Uso's a huge name. Cody's a huge name. The faces side is like stacked. So if Malakai wants to make the most impact upon his return, I think he does it as a heel. In the vein of like a Drew McIntyre, and he can plug himself into kind of a high profile situation that way. Even if it's for the mid card titles, you know what I mean? Like Shinsuke's, the current champion, Braun is the current IC champ over on Raw. So you got two heels there. I don't think it's going to last long, especially for Shinsuke. I love Shinsuke, but I don't think this title reign is for much longer. So Aleister introducing himself into that mix, I think he makes waves as a heel as well. Even going against somebody like a LA Knight, who I would like to see him, face, when he comes back. I think that would be very entertaining, and have some of the things that he brought to AEW. Yeah, the House of Black stuff. A lot of that stuff was very creative, and it also helped to really advance a lot of the people that were with him. Like, Buddy Matthews got showcased a bunch. Brody King was a beast and a lot of fun, and it did wonders for Julia Hart. If we're talking about AEW success stories, she's been one of their biggest in terms of character development, and the 180 that she did from the cheerleader gimmick to showing what she can do and being a featured female talent. There's plenty of people in NXT that could benefit from such a showcase. So doing something similar would absolutely benefit everybody involved, including Aleister. So that's how I would like to see him, back into the company, and I think it could really happen too.
And considering that AEW is pretty much just totally ripping off and doing Undisputed Era without Bobby Fish right now at this point, I think they should just if they can get the trademark or something similar, they really should just do House of Black, because I think you nailed it, that he can help elevate other people, and then having that kind of backup and being so dangerous as a faction. And this is like the most faction-filled era of WWE in a long time. That's the way to go. I mean, if they were to make him a face, I think him facing Shinsuke as like a mystery opponent at WrestleMania for the US title would be a great way to go, especially if he does his classic Aleister Black stuff, and that Aleister Black versus Shinsuke's like evil dark samurai thing, like on the big stage of WrestleMania, that could be a lot of fun. And if you want to have him win the US title right away, I'm not against it, because he's already been on the roster. Fans, a lot of the audience know him. He's already been held those secondary titles. But yeah, I prefer he be heel. And you take him because, Matthews and King are staying. You put some interesting people with him, like who was on the roster that made you feel can use a little something, or and if like the Judgment Day breaks up, maybe it's a JD Madonna or something like that. But you get some people, and especially like a female star, maybe you help elevate a female. Maybe it's like a Zoe Starks or something like that. Like if that that kind of thing falls apart. Yeah. So yeah,
I would love to see like an Apollo Crews. Like something outside like that, Apollo's super talented and not exactly utilized. I think he would benefit greatly from that. And just real quick, he's talking about if he's brought back as a face as a surprise, please keep his theme music from when he was Aleister. So bad, and but I digress on Def Rebel and his quality of theme music in WWE lately. But
yeah, it's a tough thing. How does that with all those situations and those contracts and the music change and everything? Like, hopefully it's still available, but yeah, never gonna be sure at this point. Excuse me. As always, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know your picks for Elimination Chamber, or let us know what your thoughts on Aleister Black, what he should possibly be when he comes back to WWE. Should he be face or heel? But moving on from there, let's kind of continue on a bit of an AEW tip. There were stories during the summer about Shane McMahon kicking the tires, poking around for interest in AEW. Then we got this story about Tony Khan and Shane McMahon met in Texas during the summer. There was this leaked picture, heavy on the leaked, of them talking, and then time went by and we heard nothing. And it seemed, and then the report pretty much came like, yeah, nothing's probably going to happen, and maybe they'll revisit it later. But this week, from all people, Jonathan Coachman, we got the story that Shane McMahon pretty much went into the meeting and said, I just want to run AEW. And there's even reports he claimed that he wanted equity in the company, which I'm not surprised about. That makes sense on a business level. But I want to run the whole thing instead of you to Tony Khan, who was running it. It was, a surprising comment. And that Fightful followed up on the story, confirmed that, yes, they had heard the same thing. He was asking to run the whole company. And that Coachman said that since the meeting, Tony Khan has pretty much ghosted him and hasn't talked to him since. Maybe there's an appearance down the line they do, but that it doesn't look like they're going to do business together. The first thing is, one, do you think this was a misstep? Does this pretty much prove kind of what we talked about in the past? Like, Tony would have hired him if Tony can have a McMahon work for him. But this just shows he was never going to be there to have to be somebody be his boss. And then also, considering that he was trying to get control of the company, equity, he's hanging around with his dad again. They were at Super Bowl together. Do you think maybe Vince was lurking in the background of this a little bit and pushed him, hey, see if you can get control and I'll join you?
That second scenario is scarily relevant. I think that's a little frightening to think about, but wouldn't be surprising if that was the case. It's so funny, the history with Shane and with Vince, at least, the history that we've been, privy to, has been rocky at times, and other times is just like a chip off the old block. So wouldn't be surprised to see if this is just kind of, kicking the tires and seeing what they can get out of this whole situation. That being said, yeah, if the meeting basically entailed Shane saying, I would like equity in the company, and by the way, I would love to run creative, not surprised that it was a non-starter. And, basically I got ghosted afterwards. Tony Khan, this is very much a passion project for him. This is a billionaire playing with his toys. This is pretty much the scenario we're saying here. Not to, minimize what goes into that, but Tony Khan will be damned if he gives up control of creative and this company and least of all to a McMahon. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he a lot of the identity of AEW has been as an alternative to the WWE and kind of sticking it to the McMahon empire. So to bring in a McMahon as anything other than someone under his employ was never going to fly. And so, to see how this has ended up is not surprising in the least. I'm sure neither party took it personally. Whatever the agenda was for this scenario, it just wasn't going to play out, and they all move on their separate ways. But not surprising in the least to see how this resulted.
And it's a shame too. I mean, one, I think I totally could see Vince lurking in the weeds on this and hoping, because there's been those rumblings and people in the industry for a long time speculating that's a plan or everything like that. But it's a shame. I think it really proves that Shane McMahon likes the wrestling business if he can be a boss, if he's in charge of people and he's running the show, because I think it shows he doesn't really have a no doubt he missed the industry and just wanted to be a part, because I think it's a great miss. It's a missed opportunity for both of them, not in Tony Khan's fault, because you said everything explains why he's just not going to give up the reins on this thing that he loves doing, for better or worse. But if Shane McMahon really loved wrestling and wanted to be back in it and be a part of something new that has some hip upside and is kind of cool, like, man, what a wealth of knowledge he still is. This is a guy that was in WWE during the Attitude Era as a performer, as a person backstage, like just as running a professional wrestling business, helping to run it at a high level, all the various levels that come with it, beyond the ring and marketing and all these things he's probably learned. I'm not saying he's an expert at everything, but a knowledge that few have of doing professional wrestling at a high level. What he could have brought to AEW, a company that seems to lack all of those things, all how to run a promotion, how to be profitable, how to make smart business decisions, not to just play with toys. Like for all the people that are upset with AEW or feel it could be better, maybe I'm not saying that's for sure, but maybe Shane McMahon could have really made a difference, and that's a brand and a name where Tony Khan would be more willing to listen to him than say a Mark Henry or a Arn Anderson, that guys that made similar points and they kind of like, whatever. Maybe a Shane McMahon, an idea he's a McMahon, that maybe him telling Tony to do certain things would have made a bigger difference, and they could have gone farther, and the brand would have been better. But we're never going to know, because as a McMahon, as always, they're greedy, and they want it all instead of just some of it.
It's in the blood.
moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about Goldberg, for better or worse. Some people are not thrilled by the idea, but you know what? Hey, he didn't get the typical retirement match, and the break that. And if hate Goldberg, hate him or love him, it's undeniable his impact on the sport, how popular he was, like very Ultimate Warrior like in a lot of ways, although he liked doing the job, I think, more than Warrior did, but very similar in the kind of what they brought to the sport, their attitude, their presentation, and the intensity. But he's still is important. And I'm not against a retirement match as long as he's doing the honors. And if he's doing the honors on the way out, that's fantastic. And I don't mind it whatsoever. And if he gets a moment where he's promoted for a match for a month, it's not the end of the world. That said, interesting thing, and I respect the hell out of this, is that it's beneficial for him every way from the ring anyway. And headed this match, I remember reading an article not too long ago where he had gotten surgery on his shoulder. His shoulder was a lot better condition than he had been previously at his age. He's in his 50s, but also he did stem cell surgery recently to be in better shape and give a better performance for this final match, which is great. That's great for everybody. That said, who should he face? We've all seen the Gunther rumors. Okay, they kind of set that up. That's one way to go. But who would benefit the most from facing a Goldberg and getting the win, not losing to Goldberg? Or if they want to just go with the biggest match possible, who's the options? I'm going to run some options. There's Gunther, Braun Breaker, spear versus spear. I mean, a guy like Braun Breaker would certainly benefit from a win of a Goldberg. It'd be very much passing the torch of that kind of intense style, football, spear. It's just perfect. It seemed to go. John Cena. Never saw John Cena versus Goldberg. That would be very interesting if both of them, this is their last kind of year doing this and John Cena's on the way out. That would be fun. I'm not against that kind of weird dream match, and that would be interesting for how long it goes. Maybe Braun Strowman. Maybe it's the idea of Goldberg wants to get revenge on facing Braun, losing the title to him at WrestleMania during the pandemic. Bronson Reed, if he's healthy enough where he's back in time, Bronson Reed is definitely a guy that's a perfect kind of opponent, and boy, could he benefit just to further build that name, especially since he lost a lot of steam from the injury. Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, I don't think he's going to win a world title, but he's done a lot of good work. He deserves to be a big matches. Drew McIntyre versus Goldberg. That'd probably be a good match. Maybe Finn Balor. There's been rumors that they really want to push him this year now that he's re-signed. Finn Balor versus, he'd be the underdog. You'd have the Judgment Day. They cheat to help with him win, Goldberg spearing different members of the Judgment Day or whoever he's with at that time. Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu is another one who would definitely benefit from Goldberg. Out of those, who do you want?
You ran a hell of a menu there. You know what I mean? A hell of a buffet of opponents to choose from. I think if it's a Balor situation or a Braun Strowman situation, I think that's a situation where Goldberg ends up winning and on the way out. Like I love the scenario you presented with Balor and the Judgment Day kind of helping the cheat win. But ultimately, I think it's in a scenario like that, it would be a Goldberg's retirement match where he's winning. If it's a matter of him doing the honors, I think Braun Breaker is the one that benefits the most. He's the one that kind of resembles a young Goldberg in terms of the moveset, the hunger, the intensity, a lot of similarities there. And if, the young lion kind of putting the older one out to pasture is a story that writes itself. I would love to see that. Drew is interesting. Like Drew would be a powerhouse stuff. You are speaking my language when you mentioned Bronson Reed. I love me some Bronson Reed. Very unfortunate the injury that he suffered in with his moment in War Games. But if he is healthy and coming back, having him be the guy to put out Goldberg would be just another notch on his belt and would just like elevate him even further. And I would love to see that. Ultimately, though, I think it's going to be Gunther. I think Gunther loses the title to Jey Uso at WrestleMania. He's going to need a big program after that. And this is just a very natural progression of that. Put him into a program with Goldberg, whatever the case may be. If it's for SummerSlam, maybe Gunther, runs the gamut after a while, just kind of frustrated, laying opponents out, reestablishing his dominance. And here comes a wrestler who is known for being the most dominant in his heyday to kind of present himself. One last challenge, to kind of take out Gunther. Who wins in that scenario? I can see either one playing out. Goldberg kind of takes out Gunther, which would be unfortunate to go out on top. Or if he loses to Gunther, no skin off his back, he's losing to a recent world champ and a dominant force in the WWE at the moment. So I think that's the direction they're going to go. I think it would be a fantastic match. Gunther is almost incapable of having a bad match, and that just seems like the most natural choice in this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, since they set it up, it's unlikely that they'll go away from that. That's probably what's going to happen. I just don't like the Gunther idea too much because, I mean, Gunther's already top star. I think Gunther's pretty much established. You know, when you've only lost like, what, 2 or 3 times in your entire time on the roster, I think you're pretty good to go. That's why, like, a Gunther, him beating Gunther would be fun and everything like that, but I think it's not necessary. I think Bronson would be the perfect guy. If not Bronson, I think honestly, not even 1A, just as perfect as Braun. Because I can totally picture this. And also, I forgot to mention when we set this up, Goldberg did say the match is supposed to be in the summer. That's when it's supposed to be. So SummerSlam is probably likely. But it just in the lead up, in like the weeks before, the match happens, like Braun Breaker just is like, okay, I've defended my title. I don't feel anybody's worth it. And he just starts calling him out. Like, I heard you're going to have a retirement match. I'm the Goldberg today. I'm the man now. Like, I can just see him, the way he does his promo, stuff like that, just calling out Goldberg for a few weeks. And then eventually Goldberg just answers and then eventually sets up the match and everything like that. But yeah, I think that's the way to go. And I agree. It's probably going to be Gunther, but I mean, he goes out against a top star today, former champion. That's fine. And the match should be good. Gunther will get a good match out of Goldberg, which is the pro of the whole situation. But moving on from there, of course, to our last topics. And again, please like, share, subscribe, comment, wherever you're listening and wherever you're watching. Who do you think Goldberg should face? What are your thoughts on Goldberg having a retirement match? What are your thoughts on Shane, fumbling the bag, so to speak, with a possible AEW deal? Moving on, let's move into Ricky Saints, who stunned a lot of people, pleasantly stunned a lot of people last week when he made his NXT debut. This past week on NXT, he revealed when he signed his contract, he's going to be Ricky Saints instead of Ricky Starks. I think he did a great job in his first kind of like featured moment on NXT where he was on different parts of the segments and like, this place is crazy and all kind of reaction, a great job. But I remember when we talked about Ricky Starks being a possible free agent months ago, deep into last year. And hey, he's perfect WWE. We all figured he would go. He's got the friendship with Cody Rhodes. I felt he was ready to go to the main roster. I didn't think he needed to go to NXT. But how he's been presented, what he's been like, I see why they did it now. What are your thoughts? Was NXT for him the right move, or he really should have just went to the main roster because he's that good right now?
No, I think it was the right move, and I'm with you that he was main roster ready, and has the backing of a lot of important people, so wouldn't have been surprised to see him be on the main roster. That being said, the spotlight is so much brighter on him in NXT that it really will benefit him, and they played it tremendously. Even the name, kind of keeping us in suspense as to what the name was going to be, and they kept the important part. For the most part, speaking for myself, I mostly just call him Ricky, so they kept the important part of that name. And Ricky Saints, it works. People will get used to it. It'll be fine. But yeah, I think NXT ended up being the right call in this case. NXT has been on fire lately. Love that show in terms of week to week. It has some of the best storylines going. And it'll be fun to see him featured against some of that talent. You know what I mean? Like, Ethan Page has been kind of the blueprint of a maybe underutilized AEW star coming over and getting showcased to maximum potential. So if what happened with Ethan is going to happen with Ricky, and there's no reason to believe that it won't, we're in for a hell of a ride. And he's a draw. You know what I mean? He can draw some attention to NXT. NXT is, mostly a lot of young and up-and-coming talent, as it should be. But a name like Ricky Saints will help draw a lot of eyeballs to the product on a week-to-week basis. And they've been touring a lot more lately. I know they're going to be in your neck of the woods next week in Cincinnati, so that should be a lot of fun. But for the brand to do that, they're going to need some names to sell tickets, and he's one of those. You know what I mean? And he made a hell of a first impression. It really ended up being just a really winning scenario, and it was a smart move. Bro, I'm sorry. I hate to cut you off, but I think your mic is out.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry. I try to drown out the side noise. I forgot to turn it on. But yeah, Yeah, it just I think he's ready to go to the main roster. I think always felt that he's that good. But yeah, it just there's so many people. So the roster is so good on the main roster. You got a guy like Andrade who is a talented performer, and they've tried to do things to showcase him, but there's just so much going on. Even with 3 hour shows on both brands, it's you got to really do something special, stick out. So it's always tough. So to go to NXT, become a star, at a time that's a perfect. This isn't the dumbass NXT 2.0 era with all that BS. Like this is a time where NXT is pretty much it's catching fire, and it feels like NXT back in the day with Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Finn Balor. Like it's feeling like that again, especially with the veterans that they're bringing in, and then this relationship with TNA, which makes it the coolest thing going right now. So to not only be NXT, but just start NXT, but start at a peak period, that helps him a lot. And that makes a big deal when he goes to the main roster. So yeah, I agree. I like how they did it. And also, can I get some credit? I mean, I told you like 2-3 weeks ago, or I told you like 2 weeks ago when the news came out that he's free, him and Ethan Page. And I mean, they just listened to me. They were listening to me, listening on the Echo Dot, and they knew it. They already laid the groundwork. That said, love the idea of him and Wesley. Wesley is such a good veteran, talented performer, great person to put him with, and how they did it, and he felt disrespected. Like that's a lot of fun. That said, let's move on to our next topic because Wesley is included in that. There was a big major story earlier this month where a boatload of WWE talent were released. AOP, which not sad about that. They got a ton of chances. Sonya Deville, which was a bit of a big surprise. A lot of different names were released. And the reports that came out soon after was that the recent releases were kind of tied to the fact that there's going to be talent from NXT coming up, and they're filling those spots. That said, who do you think is getting the call up? I put a little list together. Trick Williams, Roxanne Perez, Fraxium, Ridge Holland, Wesley, as I mentioned, Saul Ruka is ready to go. Gallus, they're not doing much with Gallus anymore. Jada Parker and the Meta Girls. The Meta Girls should be the tag champions in my mind. I don't know why they're not, but who do you think? I mean, I think Trick and Roxanne are obvious. Who else do you think might be a part of these call-ups that is likely soon?
Yeah, Trick and Roxanne are pretty much a given at this point. I would love to see the Meta Girls on the main roster. I think they could, really just plug into something like the SmackDown roster where, it's maybe a little lighter than it has been in the past and can really make some waves. They've proven themselves in some big matches, and, they really should be the tag team champs. And they'd be like the great candidates to take those belts off of Bianca and Naomi, whatever the case may be in terms of the progression of that story. I would love to see them get the call up. I think Wesley would be fun. My reservations about Wesley is I'm seeing Carmelo Hayes, and he's been featured every week to his credit and stuff like that, but it hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, and that's super unfortunate. I think he's really talented, and I think Wes would be like a step below him, so that doesn't speak well to his prospects. I love Sol Ruka. I would love for her to make a few more waves down in NXT before getting the call up, but wouldn't be upset to see her get the call either. When the time comes, it's not going to happen right away because they're both champs right now. But Stephanie, Vaquer, and Julia, when the time comes for them, is going to be rock solid. But in terms of the recent cuts and who I'd like to see up, I think the Meta Girls make a lot of sense. Fraxian makes a lot of sense as well, especially with the Motor City Machine Guns and DIY being featured so much. That SmackDown Tag Team division has been red hot lately. Fraxian could plug right into that. They've been tremendous in NXT. They dropped the belts to somebody else. I loved their recent matchup at Vengeance Day. I thought that was a big surprise and kind of stole the show. So, them handing the belts off and going up to the main roster, they'd be instantly kind of making waves in that division. So I can see that happening as well. Wouldn't be mad at that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Fraxium, I don't know what else they can really do. I mean, the only thing I can see them else doing is they just break them up and they go singles and they try to have singles runs. But yeah, there's nothing else to do. It just makes so much sense for them to come up. And like I said, the Meta Girls, they should have won the titles. I don't know why. I guess they have these plans and they probably have a grand plan for what's going to happen with this mystery of attack on Jade Cargill, and that'll probably affect the tag titles. And they're waiting for the right moment to do that. But they should have won the tag titles. And it's a shame too because they have been so good, and then now they're being fed to the Saul Ruka tag team with I forgot her name right now, but the new talent
Zara.
from Australia, Zara. Yeah. So it's like they're taking an L to them now, and like they shouldn't. They're like they're the best team on that brand by far. But yeah, excuse me, agree 1,000%. And I'm just excited. We're probably going to get Roxanne Perez very soon. That they're really laying the groundwork with this feud with Bayley and stuff like that to kind of set her up into a feud on the main roster. And then when they bring in Trick, I mean, hopefully it's a big crowd and we get these whoop that Trick, chants in a stadium. I mean, that's going to be very exciting. That guy has superstar written all over him. But that is it for this episode of the Parts Unknown podcast. As always, please like, share, subscribe, comment. What do you think of all these topics? Who are your picks, of course, for Elimination Chamber? But I am Jason Burgos. He is Baby Blue Jose Maldonado. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.